We have a very special guest today on the bridge. Alessia Donzello, if I'm saying that correct, is a YouTuber. You can find her on YouTube at Alessia Donzello. And she is a polyglot. We're going to talk to her about what it's like to live in China. And I guess a lot and get some tips and tricks for learning languages from someone who's an expert at it. Welcome to the bridge. How are you doing today, Alessia?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm doing good. And yes, I mean, I don't define myself to be a polyglot because I can speak four languages. Maybe a polyglot is like someone who speaks five or more languages. But yes.
Well, for those of us who only speak one or two, when you say you can speak four, that sounds unimaginable to me. It's like some character in a James Bond movie or something. So let's just get a little bit of background on you. You're originally from Italy, is that right?
Yes, I'm from Italy. And when I was 17 years old, I went to China because I won a scholarship. And then it started all from there. I started, studying Chinese. Now I can speak Chinese fluently. And also I studied Spanish. Of course, Italian is my native language and English is my second language.
Wow. So English is your second language. You grew up in Italy learning English alongside Italian. Is that right?
Yes, but like for example, if you take my classmates, they cannot speak English because they haven't actually practiced it. So after I finished high school, I started practicing my English more and more, and so I can speak it. But it's not like if you're Italian, then you can automatically speak English because you studied at school. No, it doesn't work like that.
Well, from an American perspective, growing up in California, most Californians are not bilingual at all. And some speak Spanish because Spanish is a more common language because we're close to Latin America. But a lot of us look to Europe and assume that most Europeans are bilingual. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
Depends. It depends on where you live. If you live in the north of Italy, which is not my case because I live in the south of Italy, I live in Sicily. If you live in the north of Italy, then maybe you can speak also German.
Mm.
But it's not like for everyone. It depends. Like if you live in the borders, then maybe yes.
So English and Italian, they have common ancestry with Latin and other language groups, but Chinese is completely different. Did you notice that when you were learning Chinese that it was significantly harder than learning other European languages?
It's impossible not to notice that, you know. Yeah, Chinese is crazy hard. So like you need like a lot of motivation and a lot of passion to actually learn it. If you don't have these two, I think, it's impossible to learn it because they are crazy different. Like
Mm.
the grammar structure is different. The thing that in Italian you have an alphabet, in Chinese you don't have an alphabet, you have pinyin, you have the characters. So yes, so it's different.
You mentioned coming to China at 17 on a scholarship. Was that to study Chinese? Is that what your major was? So,
No, basically, when I was in high school, I was studying music. So I was
mm,
playing piano, but at the same time, I would study philosophy. I would study literature, math, science, like every any other kid, you know. But then, like, I heard about an organization which is called AFS, who organize this kind of programs. Like you can go abroad, you can first, you win the scholarship and then you go abroad, and then you study there for 1 year,
mhm.
and when you come back you can actually graduate from high school. Well, I had to do first the last year of high school and then I graduated from high school. So in Italy, high school is 5 years in total.
Mm.
I went on the fourth year, and the fifth year I finished it in Italy, and then yeah, and then I graduated.
So, let me understand. You only spent 1 year in China, is that right?
Yeah, ten
Wow,
months
which
to be exact.
wow. So, in which city did you live?
I lived in the north of China, in Jiangsu, which is a city that is like pretty much close to the Russian borders. So
Wow.
you can actually see Russia, you know?
Do you speak any Russian?
No, 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 no. It's not like that. It's not like you, uh, like in there aren't Russian people, you know? Like
Right.
if you go there, people will be like, oh my God, a foreigner, because they have never seen foreigners. So, no, no, I cannot speak Russian.
Well, could you tell us about your experience in China? What did you think about life in China, living in China? What was your 10-month experience like? What kind of things? I'll ask a few other more specific questions later. What was your general impression of living in China?
Okay, when I went back to Italy, I was like, okay, I don't think I'll go back there. You know, I was
Mm,
like, after 10 months, I was so shocked. I was so tired because I've been studying Chinese like every single day from 8
mm.
a.m. to 9:30 p.m., like
Wow.
Chinese people, you know? So I was actually like so tired that I was like, okay, no, it's not like I want to have to deal with, these people again. And I was like that. And
So,
also,
go ahead.
no, don't worry. You go first.
Well, in terms of okay, for students who are considering this super compressed program where you study all day, you sound like it was not pleasant. Is it something that you would recommend, or something you would tell people to avoid doing?
Okay, actually, this program, it doesn't like, you go to that country because AFS can send you to 46 different countries, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
Uh, but it's not like you're going to study the language. The program is designed to go there and, to experience the culture. It's
Hmm.
not for learning the language. But the
Mm.
thing is that when I got there, the school was like, okay, because in China the schools are like, we want to become the best school in China. So they were like, okay, you are going to study Chinese and you are going to do it in a in an effective way because we want you to reach HSK 5 in the shortest amount of time possible. Like,
Wow.
for example, I reached HSK 5 in 8 months, and we were like the best school in China for that, because other schools were like, okay, we don't care about our other, our international students, or they were maybe teaching them, but they could just reach HSK 4 or HSK 3.
Mm.
So it's not about the program, it's
Mhm.
about the school where I went, that they were pretty much, they were stressing this to us. They were like, okay, you need to study Chinese and you need to do it well, because there were people coming, interviewing us. They were like, okay, you speak Chinese, let us hear how you speak Chinese. And we were like, always saying this thing, okay, I'm from Italy, I came here, I like here, I like China, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
So, can I ask you, is this the textbook you used?
no.
No, you used a different textbook. I'm just checking.
Yeah.
This is the textbook that I have not aspired to that yet. I'm still in the HSK 4. I'll move on to that someday. I'm not sure when. But I found well, that's really interesting. So that's a very high pressure environment in that particular school where they wanted you to learn Chinese. You felt that pressure made your experience less than pleasant. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, yes. It was like we could only study and we couldn't, go outside and enjoy, because, the other students that came with that organization, they were actually having fun. They were doing nothing. Now, it's not like I wanted to do nothing, but at the same time, I wanted to rest a little bit, When it's too
Mhm.
much, it's too much. For example, on Sunday, we would have to go to class from 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. On
Mm.
Saturday, we also had classes. So, we didn't have enough time to rest. And so I was like, oh my God. But then, after some months spent in Italy, after China, I gradually, uh, I don't know, maybe I recovered, I don't know. And I started again dreaming about China and saying, like, okay, I want to go there and study in university.
Mhm. Did you?
I did
So you
actually. I
came
did my
you
bachelor's
returned
degree.
to China to study at university. What city did you return to? Obviously somewhere
Shanghai.
else. Shanghai.
Yeah,
So
Shan-
can I ask? Is it all right? What university in Shanghai did you attend?
Shanghai International Studies University.
And was this a more pleasant experience?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Mm.
When you are in university, you do everything by yourself. It's not like there's someone pushing you. And if you talk to Chinese students, they would also say that in high school they feel pressured,
Mhm.
while in
Yeah, yeah,
university they are
sure, sure.
much more free.
Well, can I ask you? I know you clearly that 1 year in northern China seemed overly intense and maybe was mentally stressful, but did it prepare you to speak Chinese more fluently while you were in university in Shanghai?
Of course, because if you want to study in a Chinese university,
Mm,
then you need to have HSK 5. You
mm,
cannot enter, if you
yeah.
don't have HSK 5. So it gave me all I needed to enter university. And of course, when I enter university, I decided to study my major, which is political science,
Hmm.
completely in Chinese.
Wow.
So I was using English.
Wow. I've heard a lot of people come to China to study Chinese, but coming to Chinese university to study in their major in Chinese, that's a whole nother level. That's quite impressive. So, could you tell us about your life in China, in Shanghai, and during university, and how was that? Did you enjoy living in Shanghai?
Yeah, Shanghai is like my favorite city in the world.
Wow.
I've traveled a lot in Europe, but it's not the same. I am a big city girl. I like big cities with this fast-paced, you know,
Mm,
rhythm of life. And yeah, Shanghai is beautiful and it's also convenient in the sense that transportation is good.
mm,
If you want to eat Italian food, you can find Italian food, even though, maybe like once I eat Italian food once in 6 months when I'm in China. It's not like
mm,
I eat Italian food every single day. But if I want to find a Mexican restaurant or whatever, you can find everything.
mm,
Also, the food, like if you want it to be delivered to
mm.
your house, it's pretty much convenient. I think everything is convenient in Shanghai. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that I'm in Beijing. I have not lived in Shanghai. I've been there like 10 times. Actually, the last time I was in Shanghai, I was staying in a hotel, and I remember ordering my favorite American fast food every day to the hotel because we don't have that as much in Beijing. Anyways, yeah, Shanghai is very, very nice. Can you tell us a little bit about uh about your life in Shanghai specifically? Besides going to classes, what kind of things did you walk in the park or going out with the girls at night? What kind of lifestyle did you have?
Well, I don't enjoy going to clubs. I'm not
Mhm,
the kind of, I don't know, person, I would say. So what I did was, to have, I had like a lot of Chinese friends. So, many
mhm,
Chinese, they don't also enjoy going to nightclubs or whatever. So
mhm,
yeah, what we did was, eating together or going to some, places. I don't know, there are so many activities to do in Shanghai.
mhm,
So yes, and also, at the beginning, I didn't have much time for going outside because I was studying a lot. But in the last year, I actually had a lot of fun
mhm.
because, I was writing my two thesis because I decided to do a double degree.
Wow.
The second degree is in journalism,
Wow.
and then I also had an internship. I was doing an internship, a 6 month internship. Then I got the job for like after
Wow.
graduation. Yeah, but I decided to do not accept it.
Well, what was it
Um,
in? Was that journalism?
no, it was in marketing.
Wow. So you did a 6-month internship in Shanghai in marketing. That's in Chinese.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Wow. That's
It
amazing.
was a, it was a Chinese company, but it was a multinational company. So they
Mm,
were developing themselves in Europe.
mhm.
So that's the reason why they needed me because they needed someone who could understand the culture and understand what the clients needed here in Europe.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, your exposure to multiple languages gives you insights into other cultures. When you're learning a language, typically you need to learn the culture along with the language in order to understand the context and why the language is expressed in that way. Plus, the books, all language books are just packed full of cultural stuff just because they assume you're going to go to those places someday. One thing I noticed about your YouTube channel, I've been on there quite a few times, is that you talk a lot about a lot of languages, which you say, because we talked on WeChat a little bit, you don't speak those languages fluently. You're just kind of dabbling in them from what I can tell. So I was kind of surprised in this interview that you say that you studied international relations, because I assumed you were like some kind of language major. But I've seen videos that you have about Arabic. Obviously, you are fluent in Italian, but you also talk about Japanese and other languages. Can you, how far, when you decide, I want to play with Arabic, right? How far in do you go? Like, how many hours are you committing to that? Is it just for fun? Or is this something maybe someday I have a vision, I'm going to know Arabic?
Okay, every language has its story. So, for example, for Japanese, I actually have studied Japanese for 3 semesters in university,
Wow.
and I got at a basic slash intermediate level. But then I was like, why am I studying this language? Because, like, at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to study Japanese because it's similar to Chinese in certain ways. So
Mm,
I was like, it might be interesting, you know? But then I don't know, I didn't feel the spark, you know.
mm,
It wasn't like, for example, with Chinese, I'm like completely in love. That's my language. That's my
mm.
favorite language, more
Wow.
than English, more than Spanish. But like for Japanese, it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and so it was like, okay, then I asked myself a second question, like, do I want to go and work in Japan in the future? Do I see myself traveling to Japan? Do I see myself working in Japan? And what I actually found out is that the answer is no. I don't see myself working in Japan. Maybe traveling, yes, but
Mhm,
working, no. So I was
mm,
like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, if I'm not going to live there, then how will I use the language? You know?
mm,
So I was like, okay, let's not do it because it's also difficult. It's not like an easy language that,
mm,
like Spanish, for example. Since I'm Italian, it's like easy for me to learn Spanish,
mhm.
but Japanese is different. Like if
Yeah,
I don't go there, then I get no chance to to practice it and to use it.
right. Well, in Italy, or I guess you said you mentioned you're living in Budapest right now. So in these European languages, do you find that a lot of other Europeans who speak Spanish, who speak Italian, who speak English, who you can practice with? And also, do you find a lot of people who speak Chinese in Europe?
Okay, so right now I'm working for Huawei. So I'm
Oh,
working for a Chinese company. And
yeah.
so, of course, I speak Chinese every single day. My boyfriend is Chinese. So,
Mm,
and we were classmates in Shanghai.
wow.
Then we graduated in June 2023. We graduated. And then I wanted to stay here in China, like there in China. I wanted
Mm,
to keep working there. But then I was a little bit worried about the visa. So I was like, okay, whatever, just I will just go to Europe and I will find a Chinese company. And then he came here for his master's degree. So he's studying here, but in Germany. Yeah.
mm,
So like here there are so many Chinese people. Like
mm.
for Chinese, it's not a problem because you find Chinese people everywhere.
Wow.
For Spanish, yeah, for Spanish, it's a little bit different. Of course, you cannot find like Spanish people everywhere, but Spanish is like pretty much like it's easier to maintain as a
Mm,
language because
mm,
it's easier to study. So if today I want to review Spanish, it will be like, okay, yes, I know this,
mm.
and it will be like before, But
Right.
for Japanese, I think it's different. Yeah. For Arabic, it's Arabic. I have never studied Arabic actually, but I want to study it one day. So I'm really fond of the language and I want to
Mm,
study it. So I am continuously looking for, you know, things about the Arabic culture. I'm continuously listening to some songs. And so I did this, video where I talked about Arabic. Yeah.
Mm.
But it's not like I have studied it.
Well, I'm speaking from personal experience here. Learning languages for some of us is really hard. And so when we meet people like you who speak so many languages, I guess the first thing that comes to our mind is how do you do it? Like what do you do differently that makes you so successful at learning languages from the rest of us? What do you think some of the techniques that you use that are most effective that you could share with us today?
Okay, I think that the most important thing is not to always use a textbook. For example, for learning Spanish, I used a textbook for 1 month. I gave
Mm,
myself 1 month for studying like the basic grammar.
mm,
And after this month ended, I was like, okay, I closed that book and I started trying to listen to some Spanish, to speak some Spanish. So like my trick is to speak from day one. You don't have to wait 6 months to start speaking the language. Otherwise, you will never speak it.
mm,
Even though, like, at the beginning, you cannot, say, complex things, but, you
mm.
can just use the things that you already know to construct a sentence, to put
Wow.
words together. And then if you speak from day one, you will see that after, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you can actually speak the language at a conversational level.
Wow. Well, let me ask specifically about Chinese characters then, because it's very different from any kind of Western script that we have. And if you are working for Huawei and you had this internship and you did your bachelor's degree in Chinese, certainly you must know many thousands of characters. Uh, this can be really challenging for some of us, again, me. So, how did you memorize so many symbols?
Okay, so basically, these characters are made of radicals, no? So if you know the radicals, then it becomes easier for you. Like even though you see a character that you have never seen, but because you know the radicals, then you're like, okay, maybe it might be like the meaning might be this, no?
Mm,
And also, like when you're reading a book, you go for context. Like, for example, there is a sentence. It's not
yeah.
like you're going to just see one character, you're going to read like 20 characters.
Mhm.
And from that, you can deduct that the meaning is, you know,
You know,
like
it
you can
feels
deduct the meaning.
it feels like I think your brain just works better about this because when you say, "Oh, you're gonna read 20 characters," I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's like looking at 20 Monets and Rembrandts and trying to figure out how do they fit together in like some sort of it sounds really challenging." So, what about, there are other Chinese languages as well, and obviously your Mandarin, Putonghua, right? It must be very, very good. But what about Hakka or Cantonese? Did you dabble in those at all, or when you listen to Cantonese, does it sound similar at all to you to Mandarin?
Okay, maybe some words can sound similar,
Mm,
but I have never studied Cantonese and not in other just Mandarin. I've just
mm,
studied Mandarin. I have never studied Cantonese, but of course I have heard people speaking Cantonese. That's normal, and because when you go to university, Chinese people are coming from all over China, like from every places. They are going to Shanghai to study there. So my classmates were actually from so many different places, and they had like different accents. They had also my professors, so sometimes it's still challenging to listen to someone who speaks uh Guangdong dialects, or yeah, but it's normal.
Well, I'm assuming you watch Mandarin movies and TV shows or music, radio show, something, entertainment. Is that really easy for you?
Yeah, of course, it's easy. I've been um I've been watching TV series because I like watching more TV series than
Mm,
movies.
mhm,
Since I don't know, maybe 4 years. In the
mm.
last 4 years, I have watched like a lot. Honestly, like in the last period, I haven't watched any because, of course, I have so many things to do. So it's not like I
Right.
can always be there. And yeah, but I like watching them, and it's easy because it's conversational level Chinese. It's not like, yeah, it's not difficult to listen to them.
Well, could we talk a little bit about culture? Because obviously you came to China, you lived in a city close to the Russian border, and then later you moved to Shanghai. Were there some things in either example, when you moved to this small town or when you moved to Shanghai, where you were like, wow, the way that people are behaving is so very different from the way people behave back home? So those kind of culture shock moments, or just like surprise, it doesn't have to necessarily be negative. What kind of things did you notice were different that took you by surprise?
Okay, so if now you ask me this question, I'm like, I need to think a little bit about it. But if you would have asked me 6 years ago, I would be like, oh my God, they do this, and this. Because like 6 years ago, I was so, it was shocking. But for now, it became kind of normal
Mhm,
what they do. So it's
mhm,
like, yeah. Um, so now I need to think about it. Maybe it's the thing that they don't always say thank you. Like
mm,
sometimes if you don't know each other, then they will be like, yes, 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 yes. But
mm,
if if you like your friends,
mm,
then they will say thank you always, you know?
mm,
And I noticed this a lot when I was in Johnson, not when I was in Shanghai.
mhm,
Maybe because I'm Italian, and so we are educated to be extremely polite, to say thanks for everything. And I remember because when I was in Jammus, when I was in the north of China, I like in the weekends I would go to a host family. So
mm,
I was actually living with Chinese people on Saturday and Sunday. And I had different host families. And I remember that I had this brother telling me, like, oh, you shouldn't say thank you to me. And I was like, no, but I want to thank you. And he was like, no, but if you say thank you to me, then it's like we are strangers and we're not
oh,
strangers. But at the same time, like he was getting upset about this because I was like, okay, thank you for this, thank you for that. Saying thank you, whatever thing you would give to me. And he would be
wow.
like, yeah.
Well, what about reverse culture shock? So obviously you moved from China back to Europe. You're living in Budapest, so I'm not sure if you went back to Italy for a few months first. But when you returned to Europe, did anything that when you were a little girl, you thought, oh, this is normal, but after you lived in China and came back, you're like, why do we do it that way? Did anything surprise you about going back home?
The people, yes, the people, because they are always helping you. Like they are always worrying for you. Maybe because we're foreigners. So it's like, okay, someone from far away is coming here, and I need to welcome this person. I
So the
need to
people in
give them.
Budapest are like, oh, you're from Italy. We need to take care of you all the time.
No, no, no. Like, of course, this doesn't happen, but I'm more talking about Italians, okay? Because I've been living in Budapest just, for 3 months. So it's not like I really know the Hungarian culture. I'm more talking about Italians because we
Mm.
Italians can be pretty much selfish sometimes. Um,
You
I
I'm
don't
so
know.
confused. They take care of you really well and they're selfish. I'm so confused. Can you
No,
make
no,
that a
no,
lot?
no.
Oh.
Who takes care are the Chinese people. I'm
Oh,
not.
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think that back home we should be more like the Chinese people. I
Well,
think we should study.
okay, sure, sure. I didn't mean to say anything negative about anyone. I think, yeah. I don't know. Coming from America and China, I honestly find that there's a lot of similarities. So I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think you're right. I think in China, people are very kind. In America, people are more reserved. Like if I'm walking on the street, for example, most Americans in a big city, they will try to even avoid eye contact. Maybe they're afraid of confrontation or offending someone, so they don't actually say hello. Whereas in China, like old ladies will just be like "ni hao" to the foreigner, right? Because they're like it's someone different. Or like kids, maybe you notice in Shanghai will oftentimes point at foreigners and be like "Mama, la wai," or whatever. I don't know. That's been my experience. I don't mind it at all. I think it's kind of fun and cute. I actually enjoy standing out, and so it works out really well here. Um Can I ask you some really, it seems like your advice for learning languages is like, oh, you just read it in context. But can I ask you flashcards or anything like that, lessons, one-on-one lessons, or like for us mere mortals, what can we do to advance our game? So I guess your first tip, let me reiterate back to you, is to start speaking as soon as possible. But are there other tools in your toolkit that you use as well?
Okay, so for flashcards, sometimes, like in the past, I've used flashcards, but I
Mm,
don't think they're working for me
mm,
because, like, after I don't know how to use that word, you know? So,
mm,
like, it's a word, and you study it, you have it in your brain, but then it's like, okay, but yeah, how do I use it? So, what I do is actually to write a lot, like since
wow.
the beginning, you know? Yeah,
I don't-
like I study one word, then I just put it in a sentence and I try to make many sentences with that word
mm,
just to understand how do you put it, how do you use it. Um, yeah, and of course, I also use a lot of podcasts. Like, for
mm.
example, Duolingo has a podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that it's like half in English, half in Spanish. No, so it's actually for beginners. It's not like a podcast where, you know, someone is speaking with complex words. No, it's actually pretty much easy to understand. The
Mhm,
narrator says like some stuff in English. It's like they just tell a story and then half is in English, half is in Spanish, and
mm.
then again in Spanish. And I think like this is okay. Yeah.
Wow. That kind of reminds me of the Pimsleur course, where you listen and repeat and listen and repeat and listen and repeat. Let's see. Okay, so Shanghai specifically has an unusually large amount of foreigners for a Chinese city. It has the most, I would say, the most international, let's put it that way, city in China. So certainly there are a lot of foreigners from various countries all over the world living in Shanghai who don't speak uh, Putonghua, Mandarin, very well. So when you're there and you speak Chinese fluently, how would you say your experience as a fluent Chinese speaker was different from some of the other expats who only spoke the language of their home country?
I think it was pretty much different because, like, through the culture, through the language, you can actually understand the culture. So, for example, I have tons of Chinese friends, and
Mm,
of course, I have also some foreign friends in Shanghai. But I still prefer staying with the Chinese, and
mm,
this gives me like another perspective of, you know, seeing China. And also, like, if you can speak Chinese, you have more opportunity
mm,
when, you know, it comes to work, for example.
mm,
And also, for example, if I'm in Europe and, you know, I just graduated, it's not like I have 10 years experience in marketing, 10 years experience
mm,
in that. No. So I have no experience. I'm in Europe and I'm looking for a job. And so many people are also looking for a job. But since I can speak Chinese, you know, this is something that distinguishes me from them. Like, this
mm,
is
mm,
something that makes me stand out, no? So this is like, and you know, like so many Chinese companies are here in Europe, for example, like Xiaomi or like Huawei or Jingdong. Like there's so many Chinese companies. So I think like people that can actually speak Chinese,
mm,
they can have more opportunities to integrate also, you know, to
mhm,
integrate in China. Because like Chinese people, they can speak English, but it's not like they can speak it fluently. And maybe after hello, how are you? They will just cut off the conversation because they don't know how to go to the next topic, and maybe they are shy to speak English because they cannot speak it well. So I
mm,
think this creates like barriers, you know,
mhm.
a barrier between you and them if you cannot speak Chinese.
Well, I think that's great advice. So, for foreigners who are considering coming to China, learning Chinese is going to help them advance their career faster, is what essentially one of the pieces of advice that you're giving.
Mhm. Yeah.
What about okay? So, I want to ask because you said Shanghai is your favorite city in the world, which is amazing. Um, what about foreigners who are considering moving to China? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I don't know. This depends also on the reason why they're moving to China. If they want to study Chinese, then just go for it, but just be prepared. It's hard. I think you already know that.
Mhm.
And if you're, going there for work, it's amazing because, China has good salaries for
Mm,
foreigners, and
mm,
it's also crazy easy to find a job in China for us
mm,
because Chinese people are just, looking for foreigners, and yeah. So my advice would be to be open
mhm,
to, to learn the language, of
mhm.
course, and also to be careful because sometimes maybe this is a problem for Italians, because we can be pretty much loud. We are always laughing and shouting things, and in China it's not like that. It doesn't work like that. I notice, right now I'm working in Huawei, and so there are Hungarian people and Chinese people in the same office, but they don't just get along. It's like there is a barrier between them. They don't understand each other, and they're like, oh my god, they are too loud. Because Hungarian people, I found out that they are loud, and Chinese people are pretty much more, they are always working. While
Mm,
Hungarian people sometimes they just laugh and do make some jokes, and yeah, so this is different. And so they, even though they've been working together for 5 years, there is just, this thing that you can actually feel.
mm.
So if you're open to understand the culture, it is better for you to, yeah, to, to get used to them.
Okay, well, I have another question. So you work for a Chinese company in Europe, and your boyfriend is Chinese. Does that mean that you're gonna someday move back to China? Is that something you see yourself doing? And if so, would you like to stay here long? How long would you like to stay in China?
Well, the thing is that I love China, but for some things, like for example, if you work in China, you might only have 5 days of annual leave. And this makes me a little bit, oh my God, how do I go back home? For example. Because for going to Italy, it's not like, oh, like from Hungary to Italy that you go for 4 days and that's all.
Mm,
No, you can also go for 2 days in Italy and then come back. No, for
mm,
China it's different. Like you need like maybe at least 10 days. So
mm,
for me it's a little bit hard for
mhm,
this aspect that you don't have work-life balance because you have
mm.
to work a lot, you have to work overtime. But of course, yes, I think I will be moving there because not only because I have a boyfriend, a Chinese boyfriend, but also because I love China. So at
Mm.
a certain point, of course, I will go back. Maybe in 2 years, who knows?
So let's say theoretically, would one of you the pieces of advice for you to giving a Chinese company who want to encourage more Europeans to come, that they should give more vacation time, and that would incentivize more foreigners to come and live in China?
I think it's like that.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you work as a English teacher, maybe
Mhm,
it's okay because you have same amount of vacation as the kids. Now
mm,
you have the Chinese New Year, you have so many vacations. But if you only have 5 days, like for example in the offer that I was telling you before that I had from the previous company that I was working, I had just 5 days, and
mm.
that's like not really doable for me.
Yeah, let's do a comparison because in America, if you work for a big company, they can give you better vacation packages, but technically there are only national holidays. Like there's only a few of them, like Christmas and I don't know, Thanksgiving maybe or Halloween. I'm not even sure. I think we don't get Halloween off. 4th of July and maybe like President's Day or something like that. So there are only a few holidays spread out across in America for everyone. In Europe, you guys typically from country to country get several weeks off. Is that right?
I mean, yes, like for example, right now I have 20 days, which is not like a lot, but it's already okay for me. It works. But for example, maybe if you go to Finland or if you go to other country, it might be 40 days.
40
Like,
days. Wow.
yeah, but that also depends on your experience. Maybe if you are, I don't know, 40 years old, if you have two kids, then because, if you have kids, it's more. If you are experienced, then it's, the amount of days, it's more, yeah, the
Mm.
number of
Well,
days.
I certainly would like a lot more days off too. That's something that would incentivize me. Can we talk about coffee? Because I'm guessing, I have some Italian friends and they talk about Italian coffee like the rest of us don't know what coffee is. So when you're living in Shanghai, are you able to find coffee that meets your standards?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that when I'm in Italy, I never drink coffee. And
Oh.
my mom is like every morning, like, okay, but why don't you just, drink it with me? And I'm like, no, no, I don't like coffee, I don't like Italian coffee. Maybe it's now like a lot of people in the comments will be like, what are you talking about? But I must say that when I went to China, like when I was staying in China, I would often drink Luckin coffee.
Lucky.
I like, yeah, 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 because it's pretty much sweet, and so yeah, I love it.
Um, well, okay. Can you teach us, our listeners, a little bit about Shanghai? Because on my show, most of my guests are people who live in Beijing or are Beijingers, and we often talk about the various different neighborhoods of Beijing. And we've talked about so many different places to go. And as far as I know, as a non-Shanghai person who've been there only a few times, the only place I can ever think of is the Bund. So, what are like the top 5 or 6 cool neighborhoods in Shanghai that people should know about who are planning on taking a trip there?
Well, I have visited Shanghai as a tourist 6 years ago, so it's not like I was living like that, going to these touristy places in
Mhm.
the last few years. So it's not like I can recommend you a lot, but there is Yu Garden, which
Mhm.
is like a garden with ancient temples. Then there is a big temple that now I don't even remember the name because I don't go there often.
Yeah, sure.
Mm, so yeah, maybe I'm not
The
the
Yew Garden. Okay, well, I mean, that
yeah.
gives me one more place to go the next time I go to Shanghai because my boss keeps saying, "Oh, there's a trip to Shanghai. There's a trip to Shanghai. You should go to Shanghai. We have another business trip to Shanghai." And I'm usually like, "Oh, I've had enough Shanghai." But I end up going every year or two anyway because it's just one of those places that lots of stuff happens because what's the population? It's close to 30 million people. It's one of those I think it's in the top 2 or 3 cities in terms of population in the world. And so, and it's very sophisticated, very metropolitan, very international. And so lots and lots of huge conferences happen there that are worth covering and learning about and seeing. Um, in terms of the other languages that you speak, I want to kind of ask you about your travel. You study Japanese, you know Spanish. What other countries have you traveled to? To what countries have you visited, even if it's just for a few days as a tourist?
Okay, so basically, I have visited Dubai. So I will go for cities, okay, not countries.
Sure.
So Dubai, then yeah, China, and then of course in China I have visited so many cities, like maybe 13, like Hangzhou, Suzhou, Shanghai, Harbin,
Oh, Harbin.
Dalian, Milan, Xi'an, Beijing. So I have visited like quite a lot of places in China. Then in Europe, I have visited 3 cities in Germany. So I have been to Munich, I have been to Nuremberg, Cologne. Then I have been to Prague in the Czech Republic. Of course, I have visited many places in Italy, like Florence, Pisa, Milan, Rome, and then I went to London, Bratislava in Slovakia, and then let me think. Okay, of course, Budapest. um, yeah,
Have
and
you been to
also Barcelona.
so you didn't go to Japan at all?
No, no, no. That's what I was saying. Like, I want to go to Japan for travel. But like
Mm,
for living there, it's like, okay, no, maybe I'm not going to live there like never in my life because I'm like when I was 17, I was so open to go and live abroad. I was like, wow, that's
mm,
so exciting. Now I'm 23 and things have changed a little bit. I want to be more close to my family.
mm,
Um, so yes, if I have to live like far away from them, then it's because it's worth it. And that's,
mm.
for China or maybe Dubai, that is like closer. So I would like to work in Dubai actually.
Wow, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's my second most favorite, city in the world, Dubai. And then, yeah, so it's not like I'm considering Japan because it's like far away and
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
it's
It's interesting because you mentioned Dubai and Shanghai are two of your favorite cities in the world, and these are two of the most technologically advanced, futuristic kinds of cities that are on the planet. So you really like living in the cutting edge of metropolitanism, like really advanced cities, it sounds like.
yes, where everything is competitive. Many people are, but even though Dubai is competitive, because like if you go to LinkedIn, like you will find like maybe for every single job post, you will find like 100 applicants, 1,000 applicants, like in just a few hours. It's like
Mm,
so competitive. It's so difficult to actually find a job in Dubai. So I think it's better to go there first and
mm.
then look for a job. If you
Wow.
go on LinkedIn, they will just ask you like, "Are you in Dubai?" And you're like, "No, I'm not." And they will be like, "Okay, no, we need someone that is already in Dubai." So it's
We're gonna
actually
interview people tomorrow. So
yeah.
okay, you go ahead. You mentioned traveling around a lot of cities in China, which is gonna be one of my questions. So, you went to Harbin. Did you go during the winter?
No, no. Because I went to Harbin to take a flight for flying like in the south of China. So I was just there for, maybe 2 days, and
Mhm.
I went, around a little bit. I saw the city, but yeah, no, I haven't been in winter. It was during summer.
Well, one of the interesting things that Chinese people like, I was just in Harbin with a coworker who is also a journalist, and we were in Harbin, and I kind of gave her carte blanche. She can bring us wherever she wanted to go. A couple of the places that she brought us were extremely European looking. And so, because it's on the border with Russia and lots of Russian people live there for a long time, they built a lot of like churches and there are synagogues and all kinds of things from Europe. And so, as a European, when you went to Harbin, did you find the architecture was more similar to that back home?
Yeah, of course. I think I noticed the same things that you have noticed. It's pretty much different as a city. Everyone was asking me if I was Russian. So yeah, they might have like a lot of Russians there, and maybe there is also some universities. So that
Mm,
might also be the reason why. Actually, in Jammu there is also a university, or maybe two. I don't know how many universities there are in Jammu, and so people were also asking me if I was Russian, but with the difference that in Harbin there are like Russians. In Jammu, it's not like you're going to meet a foreigner in Jammu. Yeah.
mm, mm. Now you mentioned going to other cities, including Suzhou, Hangzhou, and Xi'an. A lot of those have very old traditional Chinese architecture, more so than Shanghai and Beijing. So, what was your did do you are you a big fan of the ancient Chinese architecture as well?
Yeah, of course. But more than like I like more Yunnan than I don't know
Yunnan.
Hangzhou. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's full of nature.
Mm,
Uh, it's I don't know. I like it. I like it more, and also because China is big. It has one culture, but at the same time, I would say that it has different cultures.
yeah.
Because there are from people like that have different customs, different
Mm,
also different languages if we want to talk
yeah,
about
sure.
different food. So yeah.
I find that actually I notice what you're talking about. This is kind of something I've been thinking about and gestating over a long time because I have noticed personally living in China that Chinese people like to emphasize the similarity. Pardon me. My wife's phone is going off. And I don't know how to turn it off. Okay, I noticed that Chinese people like to emphasize the homogeneity of China. Oh, we Chinese people do this. We Chinese people like to eat it this way. This is part of Chinese culture. But the more I travel around China, the more I realize that there are differences in the way that Chinese culture is expressed. So let me give you one example. In Beijing, I went to a Chinese New Year dinner, and they have a fish on the table. right? And the fish is supposed to face to the oldest or most important person at the table. So this is like a honorary kind of respectful thing. So it usually points at the head of the table towards the oldest or most senior person at the banquet. But when I went to Shandong, and it was Chinese New Year, they were setting the table, and I noticed the fish was not pointing at the oldest person at the table. So I readjusted it, and people were like, "No, no, no, no! Here, the fish points to the north." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It doesn't. It's not a huge thing to Chinese people, and it's not like I'm saying that Chinese culture is completely different in different places. But there are subtle differences from one region to the next, where it's not just one gigantic monolithic single culture. There's a lot of nuance between different places. But if we could go back to Yunnan for a moment, what are some of the things about Yunnan that really stood out to you and made you appreciate that more than some of the other places that you got to visit?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
In Yunnan, what made you like Yunnan more than some of the other cities that you got to visit?
Okay. I think it's beautiful because it's like full of mountains, full of nature, and the people are also, I think, different. They dress differently. Um, yeah, and also you have so many things to do. Like, for example, I remember we paid for 1 day with an agency that brought us to, I don't know, go to the sea, and then we went, we had a bike and we were riding this bike, and there was the sea, was beautiful. And then we also went to another place like in the same day, where we went to a mountain and they made us riding a horse.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we went on a boat on a lake. So like you have so many different, landscapes. You have the
Mm,
lake, you have the sea, you have the mountains, and everything looks so colorful, like full
mm,
of color. I think it is. And so beautiful. It's, I don't know. I went in May, so it wasn't like August. It wasn't that hot.
mm,
Uh, and I think it was like perfect,
mm.
especially Lijiang. Yeah.
Lijiang. So is that one of these ancient towns where it looks like a more of like a traditional Chinese village from hundreds of years ago? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I hear this from a lot of people, that Yunnan is beautiful because it has a lot of traditional Chinese culture. And I think a lot of us foreigners who come to China, one of the things that stands out to us is the historical architecture of China, and the difference, because it's dramatically different, like between like our Western traditional architecture, which is kind of maybe the reason, one of the reasons, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that you like Shanghai so much is because firstly you have the super city, but then the Bund is all these traditional European looking buildings. Do you like the Bund?
Yeah, of course I like it. I always go there to just take a stroll. It's not like I have to do anything there, but I just take the metro and I go there and I enjoy, the view and everything. But I like Shanghai because I think it's a good, place to develop yourself, develop your skills, because there are so many people that know how to do so many different things. So I
Mm,
think it's a good spot, like a good hub to develop your personal skills, of
mm,
course.
mhm,
Of course, because it's beautiful. Of course, it's because it gives you a lot of opportunities. Yunnan, it's just a place, to travel.
mm.
But it's not like a place where you say, okay, I want to stay here because, yeah, I want to develop my career here.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, but I want to ask you a couple questions about your channel. So you're a YouTuber, and we can find you at Alessia Donzello. So what kind of video, for the people who don't know your channel yet, my fans who might be looking for you, what kind of videos do you make, and what kind of content can they look forward to in the coming weeks and months?
So basically, I talk about languages, how I learn languages, and sometimes I also talk about languages that I'm interested in, like I was saying before, Arabic.
Hmm.
In the past, I have talked about how I learned Chinese in 8 months. Last video was about how, like, what to do if you can't understand English, but you cannot speak it, then I will give you some suggestions in the last video that I made. So I think it's about languages and
Great.
also about living abroad. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and joining us. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Alessia. Have a lovely, I'm not sure what time it is there. What is it, the morning?
Yeah. It's 10 in the morning.
Have a lovely morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hello.